Hi, I'm Alex from RTINGS.com. Today, we'll be doing a review of the HP OMEN 27c. We'll be evaluating it on our standardized test bench to see how it performs and if you should buy it. The HP OMEN 27c is a 27-inch 1440p gaming monitor with a 240Hz refresh rate. It's a new monitor part of the HP OMEN lineup. It's different from the other models like the Omen 27 and the Omen X27 because it has a VA panel instead of using an IPS or TN panel. We'll talk about the impact that has later on, but it improves the monitor's darkroom performance. It's only available in a 27-inch size, and there aren't any variants available for the 27c. When looking at the HP OMEN 27c, you can see it looks different from other monitors because of its curved screen. It has a 1000R curve, which is pretty aggressive. Choosing a curved screen monitor really comes down to your preference. It can help bring the edges of the screen more within your field of vision, but at a 27-inch screen size, the screen isn't too large regardless. Besides that, it has a simple design without any gamer-heavy aesthetics. The build quality is excellent. It feels really solid throughout as it has a metal stand and the plastic on the back panel doesn't flex at all. It's one of the best built monitors we've tested. The stand supports the screen well, but doesn't offer a whole lot of adjustments. You can tilt it and adjust its height, but you can't swivel it. You also can't rotate it into portrait mode, but that's expected for a curved screen monitor anyway. Looking at the inputs, it's pretty standard with one HDMI and one DisplayPort connection. It also has two USB 3.0 inputs that you can use to charge your devices like your phone and controllers. You need to make sure you connect the USB-C port to your computer for the USB slots to work. The monitor comes with a USB-C to USB-A cable for this exact use. However, keep in mind that the USB-C port is upstream only, so you can't use it to connect a display or charge your devices. Finally, let's talk about the back quickly. It has a pretty plain design, but the unique thing about this is that section housing the inputs is at an angle. It makes the inputs easier to access than monitors with down-facing inputs. At the same time, this means that the VESA mounting slots are at a 45-degree angle. If you want to wall mount the screen, you'll need to make sure the mounting arm rotates at least 45 degrees or else the screen will be at an angle. Now, let's take a look at the tests. We'll start with the contrast. A high contrast ratio is important if you use the monitor in the dark for deep, dark scenes. Unlike the majority of monitors, the Omen 27c has a VA panel, so it has good native contrast ratio and it displays deep blacks. We measured a lower native contrast than the advertised 3000 ratio, but that was done with the standard picture mode after calibration. If you don't care so much about image accuracy, we got a contrast closer to the advertised mark in the HP Enhance Plus picture mode, which is less accurate. Local dimming is a feature that controls the brightness of individual zones of the backlight. This allows for much deeper dark scenes in things like video games as the area of dark objects can be further darkened. The Omen 27c has this local dimming feature, but it performs terribly and actually worsens the measured contrast ratio with our checkerboard pattern. It's edge lit and there are only about 8 dimming zones. When there's a small highlight, one zone lights up and looks distracting, and we'll talk about the uniformity later on. However, the local dimming is sensitive and most of the zones are on all the time, so it doesn't do much anyway. The local dimming only turns on with HDR enabled and you can't disable it, so if you game in SDR, it won't be on. Now, a high peak brightness is important either in a bright room to counteract glare, or if you want brighter highlights and a more impactful image, especially in high dynamic range or HDR games. In SDR, the HP OMEN 27c has decent peak brightness. While it isn't bright enough to fight a ton of glare, it's fine if you have a few lights around. It's lower than the advertised 400 nit peak brightness, but like with the contrast, you can achieve a brighter screen with the HP Enhance Plus picture mode. It gets brighter in HDR than in SDR, but it's not enough to make small highlights pop. Also important for a bright room is good reflection handling. This monitor uses a matte coating that results in good reflection handling. It absorbs light well, so it's good if you have a few lights around, but we don't suggest placing it opposite a really bright window. A potential downside of a hazy coating is if it causes small details like text to appear grainy. Text clarity is also impacted by a bunch of factors though, like the subpixel arrangement. The text clarity is good thanks to the 1440p resolution and 27-inch screen. You can enable Windows ClearType to make some letters appear bolder, as you can see in the top photo. The matte finish introduces some haze, but it's not a big issue. Good viewing angles are important to ensure details at the far sides of the screen don't look washed out. Unfortunately, because this monitor uses a VA panel, it has narrow viewing angles and the image looks washed out from the sides. You quickly lose color accuracy as you move off center, and the screen also looks darker. We don't suggest using it for co-op gaming. An overall uniform screen brightness and color is important when playing video games to avoid distracting areas that are overly dark or bright. Like most monitors, the Omen 27c has excellent gray uniformity. Only the edges are slightly darker, but they're hard to see and there's almost no dirty screen effect in the center. Uniformity can vary between units, but it's rarely an issue on monitors. Another important aspect for darkroom gaming is the black uniformity. Our unit has disappointing black uniformity as there's cloudy white patches throughout. You can even see how the local dimming makes the picture quality worse because there's more backlight bleed along the edges. Keep in mind that uniformity can vary between units. Accuracy in the standard sRGB color space is important as it's the standard for computer use. The HP Omen 27c has very good accuracy before any sort of calibration. Most colors are accurate except some primary colors are oversaturated, and there's no sRGB mode to lock them to the sRGB color space. The screen has a blue tint due to the cold temperature. Also, some scenes look darker than they should because the gamma doesn't follow the target perfectly. Accuracy varies between units, and like any monitor, calibrating it is the best way to achieve the best accuracy. If you want to take full advantage of this monitor and display vivid colors and things like high dynamic range or HDR games, then it's important that it displays a wide color gamut. The Omen 27c is pretty standard compared to other monitors when it comes to its color volume and gamut. It has near perfect coverage of the sRGB color space used in most content, and it displays those colors in bright and dark shades. Sadly, for photo editors, it has limited coverage of the Adobe RGB color space. A high refresh rate is important for gaming. It allows the image to be drawn on the screen faster, which makes it more responsive. And if the monitor supports variable refresh rate, then you can get a smooth experience without tearing regardless of the changing frame rate. The standout feature of this monitor is its 240Hz refresh rate. This means that the screen can drop a new image up to 240 times every second, depending on the frame rate of your source. Those with AMD graphics cards can make use of the native FreeSync support, and those with NVIDIA graphics cards can use its G-Sync compatibility. You can hit the max 240Hz refresh rate over a DisplayPort connection, and VRR works without many issues. However, we noticed that VRR stops working if the refresh rate of your source is set to 60Hz. You just need to make sure you set it above 60Hz for it to work. When playing video games, a fast response time is important for the clearest image without distracting blur. The HP Omen 27c has a great response time at 240Hz. There are 5 different overdrive settings, and we recommend using level 3 because it results in the quickest response time without introducing overshoot, so there's no inverse ghosting. However, like most VA panel monitors, it has a slow response time in dark transitions, which leads to black smearing with dark objects. If the frame rate drops when you're gaming, then once again, the response time remains quick at 60Hz. We actually recommend setting the overdrive setting to level 2 because the higher levels have too much overshoot. This means you might have to change the overdrive setting if the frame rate of your game drops. If that bothers you, just leave it at level 2 even when gaming at its max refresh rate. If you want the clearest image when playing fast-paced games, then the backlight strobing feature is useful to reduce blur caused by the persistence of the image during a full frame. The Omen 27c has this optional backlight strobing feature, which is also known as black frame insertion. It flickers between 100Hz and 240Hz, but like most monitors, it doesn't work with the VRR feature enabled. It doesn't dim the screen as much as other BFI features, which is good. However, on the subject of backlight flicker, we noticed an issue with this monitor. With VRR enabled, we saw that the screen flickers in dark areas of low frame rate content, as you can see in this example video. We aren't sure if this is a common issue, but we saw the same thing with the Samsung Odyssey G7 LC32G75T, which is a similar monitor. Now, a low input lag is really important for a responsive feel when playing video games, and like many monitors, it has low input lag. Gaming feels responsive and you won't notice any delay while gaming. It's low whether you're gaming with VRR enabled or not at its max refresh rate. Lastly, let's look at some of the additional features this monitor has. As it's a gaming monitor, it's no surprise that many of the features are gaming oriented. You can add a virtual crosshair that your PC won't detect, display the frame rate, and it can adjust the gamma so you can see opponents better in shadows. There's even a multi-monitor alignment feature that displays a grid, making it easier to line the display up to another display. It also has picture-in-picture and picture-by-picture modes if you want to display images from two sources at once. Other than that, there aren't many other features and it doesn't have built-in speakers. So, this brings us to the main question. Should you buy this monitor? First of all, you can't go wrong with a 240Hz monitor if you enjoy high frame rate gaming, and the 1440p resolution helps deliver sharper images than other 1080p models. There aren't a whole lot of 240Hz monitors on the market, and there are even less with VA panels. If you enjoy darkroom gaming, then this is a great choice, and if you're a competitive gamer, it's an impressive choice. However, if you prefer something cheaper, there are other options with better value, like the Gigabyte M27Q, but that has a lower refresh rate. On the topic of 240Hz monitors with 1440p resolution and a VA panel, the Omen 27c's main competitor is the Samsung Odyssey G7 LC32G7 5T, which has the same specs. We even experienced the same VRR issues on the Samsung and HP. However, the Samsung outperforms the HP in a few areas as it has better motion handling, it gets brighter, and the stand offers more ergonomics. The Samsung is available in 27 and 32-inch models, but they cost more than the HP. While you'd be paying less for the HP, you also have to be willing to compromise on performance. If you're not a fan of VA panels and prefer an IPS monitor, there are a ton more options for you. Something like the Dell Alienware AW2721D is a good alternative because it has 1440p resolution and a 240Hz refresh rate. The main advantage of getting an IPS panel over a VA is that there's generally less black smearing on IPS panels. It also has wider viewing angles. However, it has worse darkroom performance, so you have to evaluate your use case of which panel type you need.